Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 332 of the MTGGoldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the full crew here this week, kicking things off with the owner of MTGGoldfish, Richard. How are you this fine Monday, Richard?
Hey Seth, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I am doing well as well. It's an exciting time. Modern Horizons is out, and I've been having fun with new cards. But before we get into all that, we have another co-host in Grim. How are you today, Grim?
Counterspell is legal in Modern. So I'm doing great.
So Grim's life is good. That's all it takes.
Yes, it is. Modern is everything I've wanted it to be in a long time. Counterspell, Jace the Mind Sculptor is unbanned. These are just cards that are sweet.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've kind of hinted a little bit at Modern Horizons 2, and that's going to be one of our topics for today. We're through spoiler season. The set is officially out on Magic Online. It is soon to be coming out in paper, so we're going to talk a little bit about actually playing with the set, what Modern looks like, our impressions of it. Also want to talk a bit about Historic. There was the Strixhaven Championship this weekend, a big Pro Tour, I think-ish level tournament, but some big Historic news coming out of there. And then we got an update today about Secret Lair and Universes Beyond that we wanted to talk about. And then fish mail, of course. So that is our plan for the cast today. So let's jump into it and start talking Modern Horizons 2. So Richard, Grimm, have y'all been playing Modern since the new set came out? Like, what is your initial impression to Modern in Modern Horizons 2 now that we actually have these new cards to play with?
Well, I didn't get to have all the cards I wanted from Modern Horizons 2 for the games I did play. However, I already own the counterspells. That card is sweet. It's not broken. I think that it's actually just okay. But the thing here is, it's just fun casting counterspell. And it's fun being able now to mix and match all the artworks. I've been so excited to get my paper Modern deck back, even though I have nowhere to play it. The thing here is it's just cool to play Modern. Everything seems pretty fun so far. I don't know if there's a clear front and runner Hogak just yet, but so far the most impressive thing I think I've played against is a Grief. So card's pretty decent, and Counterspell's pretty fun. Oh, and Vindicate is the truth. I love Vindicate, mostly just because I blew up a Tron land, and I was like, yo, that's cool.
I haven't seen as many counter spells as I expected, actually, and it might just be that I've been dodging the control matchups. But
are you winning your games? If you're winning your games, probably.
That's counter spells in the losers bracket already.
Yeah, I'm in the losers bracket usually. So,
what about you, Richard? I know you were on the quest for some Modern Horizons 2 cards over the weekend, and did you actually get them and get to check out the new format?
Oh yeah, so I played a lot of Modern this week. I played maybe 8 or 9 leagues. I grind so. I opened the wallet, okay, as Mr. Moneybags. I bought my Griefs. I bought my Voidwalkers, okay. I decided to not get the Ragavans because they're $100, but I got Griefs at 50 and Voidwalkers at 20 or something like that. So I was committed. I'm I spent all this money on Modern. Now I gotta get my money's worth by grinding people who can't afford the new cards. So whatever we make of the new meta game, big asterisks, right? The cards are really hard to get. The cards are really expensive. I don't believe people are playing their optimal decks. I ran into one Ragavan deck, which I expect way more, but the card is just so expensive that people can't afford it. And, I griefed my opponent, and then he's like, oh my God, how'd you get that card? And I'm like, I just paid $50 for it, and I paid for this match win. Thank you very much. Ephemerate. Right?
Pay to win.
So it was literally pay to win. The most Jund experience. But the most popular cards I've seen was Asmo, Gora, Phantasm, whatever the...
Asmore. Our friend Asmore.
The Vengevine deck. I've seen so many Vengevine decks. I've seen... so many Crashing Footfall decks using all of the evoke spells. They just evoke away, and then they just make some Crashing Footfalls with a Cascade. Or they use the evoke spells in Living End, that kind of variation. Burn, super popular. Urza Saga, extremely
card.
impressive. I feel that's probably going to be the most
That's
broken.
the ban card, actually. I forgot. Yeah.
So it looks so innocent, but they're just like, I play some janky artifacts. I make like a 5/5 golem, right? And then I make a second 5/5 golem, sack it, get an expedition map, get another one, and they just keep going. And I'm like, how is this like stupid Hammer Time deck out grinding me with like these golem tokens? And it goes in so many types of artifact decks. So I think that card will probably be the broken card. And then I personally have been playing Kaldra. Shockingly, I didn't think it would be that good, but it's kind of decent. It's like a Tarmogoyf with haste and indestructible and first strike and trample. So
how big of a problem has been your Stoneforge dying? That was my concern with Kaldra and its battle against Batterskull. Is like, is it just too risky? Do you just play it and get your Stoneforge killed and then never get to resolve Kaldra, or has it actually like worked out for the most part?
So depends. So you obviously get to Grief Ephemerate on turn 1, right? So you can clear the way quite easily, or you just do the good old Thoughtseize. But most of the time you're grabbing a sword or a Batterskull. You only grab Kaldra if you're sure they can't kill it. So if they're playing like Tron or something and you need a fast clock. But even against aggro decks, like I wouldn't grab the Kaldra because they'll just outrace you. So Batterskull is usually the play if you think they have removal. But Kaldra is good for the unfair matchups where you can just slam it when the window's open and then just end the game in like 3 turns. Because it has haste. It's like a whole nother turn off the clock. So it's pretty fast.
Yeah, I've been jumping all over and trying different things. Some stuff I just posted first budget Magic for the set with Squirrel Twin, the new Scurry Oak Ivy Lane Denizen Splinter Twin as combo. There's stuff coming up for Against the Odds that I don't want to spoil. I've been playing Enchantress, I've been playing Shaman, so I've been just like going from deck to deck and trying a bunch of different interesting stuff. I have seen Grief be very impressive. That's the one card where I've mostly gotten blown out by a couple of times now with the Ephemera synergies. I haven't ran into Urza Saga myself, but looking at the tournament results of the weekend, like our first look at what actual tournament deck looks like, Urza Saga is everywhere. Like the Modern Challenge this weekend, it was actually won by Hardened Scales using Zabaz and Urza Saga, which that makes sense. Like it's got a ton of 1-mana artifacts to tutor up. The shocking part for me was that this is showing up in like blue-white control. The best performing blue-white control deck is playing Urza Saga and toss like a couple of Mishra's Baubles and Expedition maps in so it'd have something to tutor up with it. It's showing up like across archetypes, essentially. Primeval Titan decks are tutoring up. Hammer Time, you mentioned, is playing it. So that is the card that I think has made the biggest impact. I think that's a card that when it was first spoiled, it was really exciting, but it was also the super early spoiler. And then we got all these other like super flashy cards, and maybe we forgot a little bit about just how busted Urza Saga looked when it first came out, but it's definitely making its presence felt now. I think that has to be the biggest winner so far, but this is still super early. I mean, we just got the set. As Richard said, supply is definitely an issue. Card prices are absurd. Some of the best mythics are like $80, $60, and there's a lot of like $10 plus cards where that's just a lot to ask people, especially right now, because if you've been playing Magic Online for a while, you know that prices fluctuate a ton. So you always have this fear that you're going to be like, oh, you're going to invest $80 in a single copy of like a mythic, and then a month from now it's going to be like $30 or $5, and you're just going to lose that entire. That's a lot of wins. You got to get a lot of wins in the meantime if your card crashes that much in price. What do you think about the health of Modern as a whole? Like, is it in a good place right now, or is it still too early to tell? Is there a fear that we're going to have Hogak 2.0 in a broken format based on these cards, or do you think we're going to be good?
I don't think anything is going to break Modern just yet. But I guess this is a little early. I mean, Urza Saga is the closest thing to breaking Modern right now.
Yeah, I don't know about broken. So Saga is the best card I've seen, but Voidwalker, I think, just eradicates entire archetypes. I've cast so many Eldrazi this weekend, Primeval Titans, Emeralds, Ulamogs, and like I do better than Tron, right? I cast them on turn 3. You know, Tron has to at least get to turn 4 to cast an Ulamog, right? And I think that's wrong. Like, I don't know that you should just totally invalidate entire archetypes.
No, I think you should if it's Tron, though.
It's like, I think they literally have like a 20% win rate against me or something. It's like some obscene matchup where like nothing can like, you just get a Voidwalker and you Thoughtseize them. And if you didn't draw a Voidwalker, you probably drew the Grief and then you just triple Thoughtseize them into Oblivion anyways. So I don't know. It just feels wrong. Like, am I playing a fair deck if I'm playing Ulamogs on turn 3 off my opponent? I don't think so. So
I mean, it's your opponent's fault though.
For playing Tron.
They could not play the Ulamog, so just desserts, I think, how the saying goes. But how are you doing that? Are you just like playing a bunch of Thoughtseizes? Like, is that the deck? Just like play Voidwalker and then Thoughtseize?
You literally play Voidwalker. Do they have interaction for it? They probably don't because they're Tron. And then you just Thoughtseize them after and they lose the game. Right? Or you turn one Thoughtseize, make sure you get the spatial contortion out of their hand, and then you Voidwalker, and then you grief them or whatever, right? Like, it's just so easy to destroy these decks that have like one Haymaker in them with Voidwalker. So I don't know. I feel it's wrong. Same with the Grief blind, right? The Grief Ephemerate is like a turn 2 Blood Moon, except it works on everyone. If I have those 2 cards in my opening hand, you're probably dead. Right? Even if you have like you need like to start with a ley line in play. Like if you have a Veil Summer, it's not good enough. Right? Because in response to yours, I could just Ephemerate and then get whatever card, you counter one, and then I get another one. Right? So the sequencing of these lines, like there's no way to stop it. The only way to stop it is if you have like 2 lightning bolts in hand. Right? And the open mana to take care of it. But then did you really stop anything? Right? I don't think you stopped anything if you did that, right? Control matchups are hilarious, right? You just like take Counterspell, take Teferi, take Jace if I really care. You're dead, right? You're down 3 cards. You probably have 3 lands in hand. It's over. I have a 3/2. It's Delver, right? It's Delver, except I just pre-cast all my protection spells and then you just go to town. So I think it's really good. I haven't run into it that often, but I think it's pricing issues or maybe like the Saga decks are faster and they're just better, but I feel the black cards are really strong.
Yes.
And Cauldron powers up Stoneforge Mystic too. So I feel the black-white shell is actually the best shell for them.
The matchup I got paired against Grief, I just kept pretty much 6 lands and an opt.
But you're dead, right? That just means a Stoneforge comes down and drops a Batterskull or a Cauldron piece, and you're dead, right? Like you can't afford that.
Well,
hand.
The thing here is like I just chance it that I draw into one of my many spot removals. I've changed it because like before Esper Control was like usually like 4 Fatal Push, right? But now I've gone up to 4 Path to Exile and 3 Fatal Push. And then a bunch of removal things that I want to top deck off, like in that way I can answer the board. That way I can play around annoying Ephemerate. Or try to play around it. Otherwise, I'm like praying to the top deck gods.
The Grief synergy does feel pretty unbeatable when it happens. Like Blood Moon is not the worst comparison. Like when you get Thoughtseize 3 times, you just have to get incredibly lucky to win, which is kind of similar to Blood Moon. Like, sure, if you top deck your few basics, like you're fine and you got them, but in general, if you get triple Thoughtseized off of Grief and Ephemerate, the game is essentially just over. I guess you've been playing the deck, Richard. Like, is it super consistent? I guess that's the question. Like, how often do you have Grief and Ephemerate? Is it something you're like mulliganing for to try to assemble that, or it's just like, oh, it's cool when it happens?
No, I sided out a lot of the games. It's basically like if I remove that part, right? You're playing a Stoneforge deck, right? You're playing a mid-range deck, which is pretty good, right? It probably has like 45% win rate, right? And then you add in the 15% of the time where you just jank them out with Ephemerate Grief. And then you add in the other 10% of the time where you just jank them out with Voidwalk or Ulamog. And then you got a pretty decent deck, right? Like I feel like I probably have like 60-40 on like most decks. Maybe that's too high. 55-45 on most decks, which is the opposite of Jund. Jund is usually like your 45-55 against most decks. I feel this deck doesn't have many weaknesses. I feel it's maybe too good of a mid-range deck. So yeah, I mean, the fallback plan is I play Stoneforge and you answer it, which is a pretty decent plan on itself. So it's not like the whole deck falls apart, right? And I have Ephemerates from my Stoneforge, so I can get a Batterskull, get a sword with the bounce. And then I'm playing Geralf's Messenger just for some burn and reach. Shockingly, not bad. So, you have to have other uses for
Geralf's
ephemerate.
Messenger? Sorry.
I'm playing Geralf's Messenger.
From what set was that? Dark Ascension? How many years ago is that?
Okay. Funny thing, I sent you guys a screenshot. I played against Siege Rhino, and I lost against Siege Rhino. And I'm like, this guy, I'm like, I started the match like, this poor soul probably saw Modern Horizons 2 and like decided to get back into Modern, didn't have new cards, so here he is playing Siege Rhino. And then like 2 turns later, I'm getting like lightning helix multiple times with Blink Siege Rhinos. I'm like, I can't handle this, I'm dead. Oh my goodness. And then I died to Siege Rhino and I felt ashamed.
What do you think about Ragavan? Is that actually as good as people think it is? I know that was a card you were looking for earlier. It's been one of the most hyped cards. It's the most expensive card. I personally have not run into it once. I have not seen I haven't played it because it costs $1 million, and I haven't seen anyone else play it, probably because it costs a ton of money. Have any of you seen it in action or actually got to play it? Like, is it gonna live up to the hype?
I haven't seen it at all, but I definitely think that's a price thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a price. I've seen it once. I just think red, like there's no shell for it. I think that's the problem. I think it's a really strong card, but there's like no red mid-rangey deck you want to be playing. Like aggro decks won't play it because they'll just play Monasteries with Spear and Goblin Guides and stuff. Like Jund would play it, but I think the rest of Jund sucks and Ragavans are very expensive. So I don't know what deck would actually run it. And a lot of times in Modern, you don't want your opponent's card if you have to cast mana for it. Right? It's good if you're playing like, say, Vintage or Legacy, where everyone's deck is the same pile of blue cards and you'll take all their cards. Here, like if I flip an Ulamog off of Ragavan, I'm not casting that. I can't do anything about that, right? If I flip a Goblin Guide or something, I guess I could cast it as a terrible blocker, but like that's not what I'm looking for. So it's just the ramp and like some card advantage in like certain matchups. But I just think it doesn't have a shell. Like I don't know what deck you put it in such that it's good.
And yeah, maybe that's something that's just going to take a little bit of time. Like there's other very strong stuff that I haven't really seen much of yet. Like the reanimation package. That's something I haven't seen too much. We were talking about red aggro decks and how those are going to shake out. I haven't seen any like Enchantress decks yet. I don't know how strong those are going to be. The Green Storm stuff. Maybe that's all just for Commander, but I haven't seen that at all. So I feel like we've seen a lot of the most obvious decks. There's some decks where it's like, hey, I can throw this Madness card in with my hollow ones and that's probably going to work out really well. Or like, oh, Cauldra, that's an equipment. I can get it with my Stoneforge. I might as well try that. But I feel like there's still a lot more to be explored with this set. And so far we've mostly seen upgrades to existing decks rather than some of the new decks that I think have potential. I don't know. Did you guys happen to see Sam Black's article? Sam helped with making the set at Wizards in like testing cards, and he wrote an article about his experiences, and apparently they had to nerf squirrels. That was what stood out to me. Like when he got there, squirrels I guess were like super busted. And he had to talk Wizards into powering down the squirrel tribe because they were going to break Modern. They're just too good.
Sam Black denying us the broken squirrel deck in Modern? Why?
It's just hilarious to me that they were broken at one point, apparently.
What did they do pre-nerf? How could you break it with like 1/1 creatures? Interesting.
Yeah. So, well, Modern is sweet. I have greatly enjoyed playing it, and I mean, I'm still just super hyped. Even though it's been a few days, I still feel like there's a ton to explore in this set in coming weeks and months, and it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. We are just in the infancy of our post-Modern Horizons 2 format, so long ways to go, many things to still figure out, but we got other formats to talk about too. Richard, first, do you have a sponsor today? I think we might have a sponsor today.
All right. Today's episode is brought to you by NordVPN. NordVPN secures your internet and protects your data. So if you're like me and you use your laptop at a coffee shop or an airport, you don't want people stealing your Cauldra tech, the Stoneforge Mystic Cauldra secrets. NordVPN keeps your connection secure and safe without sacrificing speed. They have thousands of servers in over 60 plus countries, and they have a strict no logging policy. One of my favorite things to do is to use NordVPN to watch Netflix, to watch shows from other countries at no additional cost. So go to nordvpn.com/mtggoldfish or use the coupon code MTGGoldfish to get a 2-year plan plus 1 additional month at a huge discount. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you've got nothing to lose. So that's nordvpn.com/mtggoldfish or use code MTGGoldfish. So thank you, NordVPN, for sponsoring today's episode.
So this weekend was the Strixhaven Championship, which I think is roughly the equivalent of a Pro Tour. Hard to keep up on the names these days. We got a full weekend of Magic. We got a top 8 that was historic. Richard, what did it look like? What went down at the Strixhaven Championship?
All right, the Steam Vents Championship happened. Turns out when you put Brainstorm into a format, people will figure out how to make Brainstorm really good, even if there are no fetches. And Historic was just dominated with blue-red decks. And, I think 7 of 8 of the top 8. And we had blue-red mirrors all throughout the top 8. And then eventually, surprise, Steam Vents won the championship. That was my takeaway after learning about the event, literally like 4 hours after it started due to Wizards' impressive marketing.
I think that it was actually all blue-red decks in the top 8. I mean, I guess there's some Jeskai decks mixed in, but there's still Steam Vents decks. Looking over the deck list, I believe the top 8 had one missing Brainstorm, or else every single player would have been playing a playset. So 31 out of 32 possible Brainstorms. Also, quite a few Faithless Lootings, although I think Brainstorm is number 1 right now. I don't know what I think about this format. I've seen some of the pros talking about it today on social media after their tournament this weekend. They seem to think it's kind of a 1 or 2 deck meta, and you got to play one of the Izzet decks essentially to be competitive in the format. Krim, you play a lot of Historic. What do you think about where the Historic meta is at right now? Are we to the point where it's time to do something about Brainstorm?
No. I don't know if it's just because, look.
Will Krim ever nerf a blue card? If Hogak was blue, Krim would be the champion of Hogak.
No, but okay, hear me out. This is why I've enjoyed Brainstorm in the format. When I get thought seized, I can tuck it away, right? I've really enjoyed that interaction. So, I mean, I even think Brainstorm can come into Modern. I'm just kidding. We can't even have preordained. What we're going to worry about. But the thing is, in Historic, I felt like Brainstorm has been an absolute delight to have. Being able to tuck away your stuff from thought seizes to, hide your spells, it adds a lot of play to your matches. I think that the Phoenix deck looks a little intimidating only because there's just so many cheap spells. It's a critical mass of them. So that's why I don't think it's just Brainstorm is the problem here. It's the fact that, Phoenix just has so many solid cheap spells, and we don't even have Path to Exile. If Path to Exile were something in this format, it'd be great, right? But we don't, so it's not like Fatal Push can stop Stormwing Entity, and Fatal Push doesn't permanently stop the Arclight. However, I noticed that maybe just because a lot of people weren't playing blue-black control, because I played blue-black control and I always beat the Phoenix decks. So I don't see the issue here. So, but there must be some matchup where blue-black is bad because the pros just don't play it. And I'm very curious as to why.
Yeah. So the exact breakdown of top 8 is 5 Jeskai turns, 2 Izzet Phoenixes, and 1 Jeskai control.
Right.
So those are how the Steam events break down for the top 8. And I've heard the pros say the black base decks destroy the turns decks, right? But
yeah,
it's probably against the rest of the field. But maybe at the rest of the field of this Pro Tour was all Jeskai anyway.
Yeah.
Or is it or Jeskai? So I don't know who's worried about Thoughtseize in this meta here. You're more worried
I'm
about.
I'm also playing
dinosaur.
Thought Distortion and Thoughtseize, and I've been having the time of my life. So I'm just what is the problem here? I don't understand what people are afraid of. Thought Distortion pants is half almost that entire deck, that entire field. I mean, I didn't see a single commit anywhere in here. So,
but you're still playing Brainstorm, right?
Oh yeah, of course, Brainstorm's great.
Yeah, so it's still a 1-card meta, right? It's just what color are you pairing with your Brainstorm? Would you like a little Demir action or a little Izzet action?
Good. Brainstorm is good. I think it's no different to me than it's a counterplay to I think all the colors have their 1-drop pillar spells. I mean, green just has whatever gets printed. But the thing here is the thing is Brainstorm is there for blue, red has Faithless Looting, black has Thoughtseize, white has Divine Gambit, and so. But right now we're gonna look one step at a time. Okay, we're gonna get Path eventually. I hope. I think Brainstorm is a fine card in Historic right now, and I am the blue player. But the thing here is, I think that it actually adds a lot of depth to the format. It may feel like, oh, everyone plays Brainstorm, but I mean that's because it's true. But it's just fun. I love that kind of magic. So I am all for it. And Arclight Phoenix, Jeskai Turns, all those decks, whatever. I don't know why. Okay, I genuinely want to ask the pros, why don't you play blue black? Why aren't you playing blue black? Why? Because every time I played against those decks with blue black, it's been one-sided.
I don't know if blue-black control is the answer that most Magic players are looking for. Oh, you can beat the Jeskai control decks if you're blue-black control.
Yeah, I legitimately broke Arena trying to do the Silmgar's Command and Mystic Sanctuary bounce. And so, I mean, granted, I think on stream, it was the slowest climbing of the ladder. It took me a full, I think 40 minutes to win one game pretty much. Not really 40 minutes, but I just kept bouncing my Mystic Sanctuary back and forth and countering non-creature spells. It was great.
I mean, if you actually look at beyond the top 8 of this tournament, I think that Brainstorm's got to go. Hopefully sooner rather than later. If you go to MTGGoldfish.com, we have the whole meta. You can see all the decks that are played. If you go to the top 100 performing decks, these are decks that went down. Well, let's start with the top. These are decks that went 6-1 or better. There's one Selesnya Company. There's one 5-color Niv deck. Everything else is the Jeskai Izzet piles. And even if you go to the top 100 decks at this tournament and go through the whole list, there's, I guess, a Teamer Marvel in there. There's one Jund Food deck, another Niv Mizzet deck, but really, essentially every single one of the top performing decks is one of these decks. I guess there's a Grixis control that's almost blue-black control that snuck in at 5-2, but the metagame was essentially just all one card in all one deck. I don't know. That doesn't sound all that appealing for me. I think Brainstorm is a really fun card to resolve, but it's also a broken card. It gets by in Legacy because it's been grandfathered in, even though Legacy players know that it probably shouldn't be part of the format, but it's never gonna go because it's just synonymous with Legacy. Historic doesn't have that luxury at this point. It's only been in the format for a couple months. I mean, I guess I'm going to be playing Modern, so if you want to muck around for a while with Brainstorms, but hopefully by the time I'm interested in moving away from Modern and playing Historic again, I will be hoping for it to be banned, because Jeskai Turns versus Phoenix versus Jeskai Control, that does not sound like the kind of meta I would enjoy all that much.
So everyone forgets about the other side of Legacy, right? We all look at Legacy like, oh, the great format, right? But we all forget it's a Brainstorm format. It's a one-color format, right? Yes, there are other colors, but there's clearly a best color in Legacy, and it's very imbalanced. And people who love Legacy accept that, right? They accept that, yes, one color is vastly superior than the other colors, and we're playing it. I don't know that we want that for Historic or Modern or, some of these other formats where you get a chance to play different strategies, right? Strategies that don't necessarily need to, say, interact only on the stack, strategies that don't cast Brainstorm. So I don't know how I feel about this for Historic. I think you want more variety. But, you could change it into Legacy where every deck starts blue-based and still have a pretty good metagame, right? It's just, the blue-black deck versus the blue-red deck versus the blue-white deck. But, it's all blue still. I don't know.
I feel like if that's the direction you go, then you got to greatly improve the mana. Because one of the things that makes it, I think, still be fun in Legacy is because you have original dual lands and because you have fetch lands, there's still a lot of diversity even among Brainstorm decks. Like there's a lot of difference between some sort of like mid-range Knight of the Reliquary style deck and like Izzet Delver or Miracles, but they're all still blue-based Brainstorm decks that are playing, you know, Force of Will, playing the Brainstorms, kind of the blue package in the format. I feel like it's going to be harder for there to be diversity among Brainstorm decks in a format like Historic, where you're just very restricted by your mana. You can't be, just be, you know, 4 colors and it's all going to work out and I can still just splash my Brainstorms, because we just don't have that good of mana. So I don't know. I don't know if Historic could actually function the way that Legacy does and still be fun. I think you would end up with this like default of like blue-black control versus blue-white control versus Jeskai control or whatever, and just have all the control decks like battle it out with, you know, a different splash color for their finishers or a little bit different removal, but the same like core of the deck, which I don't know. That doesn't seem all that interesting to me.
What about the other cards? Do we care about like Time Warp? Do we care about Memory Lapse, maybe? Any of these other cards, or are we just strictly talking Brainstorm?
I think eventually people are going to work their way to that. Right now, the problem of the week is currently Brainstorm. I don't think it is, but eventually they'll find everyone will work their way towards a new card that will just be powerful. And I mean, I think Memory Lapse is really good, but I don't even play 4 of them. I play like 3 or 2 or something like that, unless I have a deck that can back it up with a clock. So so if this goes, does Faithless Looting go next?
I mean, I would have Brainstorm number 1 right now as far as potential changes to Historic. I would probably have Faithless Looting second behind it. I think part of the reason maybe why we haven't seen more Faithless Lootings is because Brainstorm is Faithless Looting Plus for a lot of decks. And I think if you did end up banning Brainstorm, then you would probably see a lot more decks go ahead and play the Faithless Looting. Like, it kind of surprises me looking at like Sam Party's Jeskai Turns deck, which is trying to Mystics Mastery Time Warps. It's not even playing Faithless Looting. It's playing Brainstorms and Expressive Iterations. Faithless Looting seems like an auto include in that deck to me. Like that seems so obvious. Like, I discard my Time Warp and I reanimate it with Mystics Mastery. So I feel like if you ban Brainstorm, there would be a lot of just direct replacements where, now my Brainstorm is Faithless Looting and it's good enough to keep my deck running. And then I would say that stuff like Time Warp, Mystics Mastery is another one that I think has had a really huge impact on the format. Like that might just be too good for the format. Being able to cast we've seen ultimatums, we've seen Dragon Storms, we've seen extra turn spells pretty consistently on like turn 3-ish if you build your deck around it. That's pretty frightening. Time Warp, I guess, could be on the list. I don't know, Memory Lapse for me is pretty far down my list, but I'd be starting with Brainstorm, followed by Faithless Looting, followed by Mystics Mastery, I think, for my Historic watch list at this point.
I haven't thought Time Warp was a problem, like at all.
I mean, you do also always have counter spells, Grim.
That may be true, but like, like that isn't enough to just beat a Time Warp, right? I think maybe people are like also like it is possible that people are just countering the wrong spells when it comes to like the Time Warp decks. The Time Warp always resolves. It's the
you're assuming there's a counter spell to be played against any of these cards, Grim. What if you're not playing a counter spell?
Right, and the thing here is, so if I answer the Velomachus, right, like that's what I mean. Like I'm not countering the extra turn spell. My extra turns opponents always take like 100 turns. I just kill their Velomachus, and then I just don't care about whatever else they do.
I think the question's got to be though, like, can non-counter spell decks compete? Like,
yeah,
I'm sure you can beat those decks, but if like
you don't need a counter spell to kill Velomachus. I'm talking about like kill Velomachus, like the good old gotcha, Heartless Act, like you know what I mean, like interaction. That is,
but like, what do you like? They just counter your kill spell. You thought seize them. They brainstorm their stuff away. Like I think there's a little imbalance. I think if you want to fight this deck, you need to play blue cards. I feel non-blue decks just have to like play solitaire and go off and try to win first. But I don't think you can interact with this. It's like really difficult to interact with
look
this.
Look at the non-blue decks in the format, though. The non-blue decks have, I guess, very weird interaction. So like the Selesnya deck is a popular deck, right? But the Selesnya deck doesn't actually have any main deck ways to kill that card. other than like out of the sideboard where finally they get to like have giant killer and stuff like that. But like I think that if decks tune themselves a little bit more to answer Velomachus, like the opponent can take as many turns as they want, right? Because at that point, their ways of beating you are to make a shark token, and you know what I mean. Like, and Velomachus is how they legitimately take tons and tons of turns.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just been a pretty major upheaval. We've been focusing on Modern and how much things are going to change for Modern Horizons, but it is pretty stunning just like how different Historic is now than it was before Strixhaven. Like the Boggles deck, basically not a deck anymore. Selesnya Gruul, can't really play him anymore. Sacrifice, can't really play it anymore. Even Arcanist decks are pretty much like not a thing anymore. So a lot of the like former top tier of the meta doesn't seem to be super playable in the current meta and what's going on, which not that that's a bad thing. I do like that Historic changes a lot. I guess I just wish that there was more diversity. I feel like this tournament in specific makes it look like you kind of got to play blue-red, maybe adding a splash color to be competitive in Historic. And I don't know if we want Historic to be a place where you have to play specific colors to compete. Like, do you have any concern with that, Grim? Like, do you think you have to be a blue deck to compete? Or do you actually think that, like, the Gruuls and Selesnyas of the world can keep up with, like, Phoenix, the Turns deck, Jeskai control at the top of the meta?
Well, I mean, I think you can if you like prepare for a few of these decks. Like I play 4 Fries out of any deck that doesn't play, because you know being able to blow up a red or a blue or white thing, Velomachus, is pretty important. So I think you can. It's just a lot of decks have to tune differently. And like, cause I won with like Naya tokens, right? Like Naya tokens in the format.
And I mean, it is important to say that this was a Pro Tour meta, not necessarily the same as what you will play at Platinum on the Ladder or whatever, you know, whatever you're playing. So your experience might be a little bit different. Right. I still think that Brainstorm's probably got to go. I don't think you're going to sell me on
big
keeping
enough,
it.
right? It's not like Worlds where there's like 8 people, right? We have like hundreds of competitors, right? So if this follows the trend where people watch Pro Tours and then they just mimic it on Ladder, prepare for a lot of Jeskai decks on Ladder. However, I want to ask you guys, what do you think Modern Horizons has to do with this? Do you think people are still interested in Historic and they'll play Historic, given Modern Horizons is out and people want to get back into Modern? Or do you think they're actually separate? Like if you bought into Arena, you'll just stick on Arena. Or do you think most of the Historic players are actually like grizzled old Modern players and they're like waiting for the chance to jump back into Modern?
I think Historic and Modern are different enough. And because first off, the cost of everything Modern Horizons right now is just really off-putting. And then, of course, there's the amount of fun I can have with Modern is definitely capped. Because, like, Horizon, it just, I don't know, it feels like it's capped because I can't stand Moto. Like, so, like, after being so conditioned to see Arena, the bells and whistles and whatnot, like, and sure, Arena has its bugs and it definitely has its econ flaws and stuff like that too. I just can't stand Moto's interface.
I think for me, it really depends on the player. I think it'll matter to some extent because if you look at me, for example, I'm someone who jumps from format to format based on like what I'm feeling, the new set that's coming out. I expect that I will play almost exclusively, well, not exclusively, but mostly Modern over the next couple of months. And I would be surprised if I played much Historic at all over the next couple of months. And I'm sure there's other players like me who are like, well, Standard sucks. We know Modern Horizons 2 is coming out in another month. What format do I got to play right now? I'm going to, play a bunch of Historic. I'm sure there will be other people who switch over. I don't think that means those players are going to leave Historic forever, and they'll probably come back, once the newness of Modern Horizons wears off. And I also think there are some people who are just locked into their client, more or less. There are some people who only play Arena, have never played Magic Online, or like Crim, don't really like Magic Online, even though they played it. And those people I don't think are many of them at least, are going to take the plunge and like learn Moto specifically for Modern Horizons. It will be interesting to see if paper Magic returning matters. Like that's something that's actually happening now. There's people that are doing back pre-release events for Strixhaven and Zendikar Rising at their local game stores because they're finally being able to reopen. So that might be the bigger thing for Historic, is maybe paper Magic, even like Modern, and also like Commander, and just like going to an FNM or LGS because you've been cooped up inside for the last year and a half. That might be competing with Historic a little bit, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. I think it really depends on the individual though, and how they engage with the game. All right, so we got one more topic we got to get to before fish mail, and it is a interesting one and a new one. So just this morning, Wizards published an article called Secret Lair Universes Beyond Update. Kind of looks like a string of Magic buzzwords from the past year, just mash them all together, and that's the article. Richard, why don't you give us a TLDR of what this article is saying?
All right, TLDR is Universes Beyond Update. They will be putting mechanically equivalent in Magic versions of cards 6 months after release into the list, which is the random set of reprints that they put into set boosters. And these cards will be considered equivalent, meaning it'll be like the Ikoria setup or something like that, where they might have different names, but they're considered the same thing. So they will be having exclusive secret layers, but they will reprint the Magic version approximately 6 months, in quotes, after the release in Secret Lair in the list.
Wait.
So
What?
So basically, I think my version of this is they're
My
going
TLDR
to make.
did not work. Go, Seth.
All right, I'll give the TLDR of Richard's TLDR. The second TLDR is they're going to make more Walking Dead style secret layers with unique cards that do not have a Magic version. But within 6 months of printing those secret layers, they're going to print Magic versions, kind of like the Godzilla skin type thing, Magic versions of those cards, and they're going to be printed on the list in set boosters, and those cards will be the same. So you can't play 4 of your Walking Dead card and then 4 of the Magic version reprint. Or kind of like Godzilla is probably the best example. You can't play 4 of your actual Godzilla card and then 4 of the Magic name version of the Godzilla card. You can only play 4 total copies. Basically, this is Wizards, I think, trying to listen to the feedback a little bit that people don't like unique cards in secret layers. That was a big concern that I personally had, is not Universes Beyond, but just printing any cards as unique cards in secret layers. If one of them actually becomes a tournament staple or a combo piece gets printed as set in the future and it becomes in demand, that could be a big problem. Reprinting those cards as Magic cards seems like a good solution. My problem with it is the list is just not a real reprinting. Like, I did a finance update this weekend, and the list version of Tulane is like $2,000. And that doesn't mean anyone's paying $2,000, but the supply is so low. There's like 10 copies listed on the entire internet, sold out most places. And the people that do have them listed for, the cheapest one I found was one on eBay for $200. And the other ones were $1,000+ on TCG and on eBay. Card Kingdom sold out. So the list just does not offer very much supply. So I feel like this maybe just does lip service to what the community wants. Like, Wizards knew that we didn't like unique secret layer drops, and they knew we wanted Magic versions of those cards, so they're kind of doing it, but they're doing it in like such a low supply way that I'm afraid what's actually going to happen is we're going to have like really expensive collectible secret layer versions of cards, and then equally expensive or even more expensive Magic versions of those same cards that are only released on the list. So I feel like Wizards made it like 75% of the way towards where I'd want them to go. If they were putting them in standard sets or Commander precons or even master sets or something, Modern Horizon style sets, I'd be much more comfortable with it. My concern is just the list is just not put many cards in circulation. So I don't know if this actually solves the concern of printing unique cards in secret layers and then having one of those cards take off and be in demand and spike in price. I think you're still going to have to deal with that issue, even with the list adding a few extra copies to the market.
I give this a 1% solution. 1%. I think this is terrible. But go ahead, Crip.
Okay, well, hold on. I like the announcement itself is like, I'm happy that they're gonna reprint all this stuff. And like much like Seth had mentioned, it's pretty awful that it's gonna be in the list. Also, what is the list again? Like the list is like a bunch of cards. I remember it's the list of cards that randomly come in a set booster, and it's only in the set booster, right? I've clearly gotten very lost along the way how things are released. So
I think I need to do a video about this because many people are confused on Twitter as well. But the list is only in set boosters. It is a rotating list of cards. It actually, you don't play Moto as much as I do. It reminds me of treasure chests on Magic Online, or it's just like a curated list of cards that they update every set. And there is some small percent chance that when you open a set booster, you could get one of these cards. They're all reprints. Some of them are really valuable. Some of them are not, but you don't get one in every pack, and they are weighted by rarity. So your odds of getting like a mythic card from the list is pretty low. It takes, I think, hundreds of boxes to get any individual mythic, but your odds of getting a card from the list, I think it's 1 in 4 packs will have a card of some type from the list on it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's right. I remember I got a pack of like Kaldheim or something, and I found a random, I don't know, Alara
Mirrodin card or something.
I was like, what? Why?
Yeah, that was the worst thing ever, because people open, they're like, was there an error in my package? Why do I have a random Odyssey card in my Kaldheim pack? Right. But like Seth said, it's a list of 300 cards, 25% chance of appearing in a set booster. And from doing EV calculations, like they add no value to the packs. And there are some very expensive cards, which means the probability of opening these cards is very low, which means the supply for this is very low. And like Seth said, it's treasure chests for Moto. And we all know that cards that are released through treasure chests exclusively are super expensive. But the reason I dislike this is this solution is made for enfranchised players, right? It's made for people like you and me. It's not made for casuals, because casuals don't care about this and they'll just buy the secret lair. 6 months is like forever, right? 6 months does not count. Like, imagine what the metagame will go through in 6 months, right? Are you really going to wait 6 months to build your commander deck? Are you going to play a suboptimal legacy deck for 6 months? Like, no, right? It just doesn't count. You're just going to buy the secret lair anyway, and you're going to play with Gandalf or whatever, even if you don't like Gandalf. So I don't know what to play this. I feel Wizards should have just held their line and just said, yeah, we're going to make exclusive cards, right? And that's it. What I'm hoping doesn't happen is they're like, look, these cards are accessible to everyone now because they're in the list 6 months after. Let's go nuts with mechanically unique cards. I really hope it doesn't open the door for that. I'm really scared of that, because to me, the 6 month later in the list thing, like, is BS. Like, you're better off just buying the secret lair version if you think you want it, because it will probably be cheaper and you'll get it 6 months ahead of time and you get to play with it instead of waiting forever. And then there's like no supply in the market and you paying a fistful of money anyway.
Yeah, I think that is a bit of a concern. The one thing I will say that I do like about it is having a Magic version of the card does get around some IP issues for future reprints. Like, let's say they print, I don't know, Gandalf is a secret lair card, and then they print Magic version of Gandalf on the list. In the future, they could print the Magic version of Gandalf in a standard set or something, because I've heard there's some like weird IP issues. Like, I learned over the weekend apparently that like Magic artists can't sell their original art of Godzilla cards because of IP issues. Like, you always see the auctions for like original Magic art, but when it comes to other companies' IPs, then there's actually like a lot of issues there. So I don't know if Wizards has the rights to be able to reprint like the Walking Dead cards. I don't know if they could put those in Modern Horizons 2 if they wanted to. So that is one small benefit, but still, I have a lot of concerns about how this is all going to end up, from what Richard said about Wizards just going ham and printing like a ridiculous amount of exclusive cards because I think it's safe now, to like just supply issues of the list because it's so hard to find the rarer cards on the list. Wizards did say they're going to show up more frequently than they normally would on the list, but we don't know what that means. Like, if you're getting one every pack or something, sure, maybe that's fine, but my guess is it's somewhat more frequent than non-Universes Beyond cards, but still not enough to really matter when you consider how scarce the list cards are.
Yeah, and we know, like, this will be a problem. Like, I don't know why people think it's going to be okay given what Wizards said. It's like, you don't make cards that people don't want, right? Like there's no value in like, oh, we'll make buy a box promos, but we won't make them too good. We'll make sure they suck so no one wants them, thus defeating the purpose of the buy a box promo, right? No, you make them good so that everyone wants them, and then they skyrocket in price, right? Like these Universes Beyond cards will be good. You cannot make like a Spider-Man card and have it suck, right? Like the IP owners won't like it. You know, it'll damage all this stuff. So it will be a good card, right? Hopefully it's a good card for only Commander ? But even then, like if you're a Commander player, you want this card, you're gonna go get it, right? Legacy players, if it's a good card that they don't want it, like they have to buy it anyway. So I don't like this argument of like, oh, you know, we'll keep the mechanically unique cards not too good. Like, why would they actively make bad cards? They wouldn't, right? They would make good, desirable cards, right? And then you will need them. And end of story, right? So I think this is a problem.
I think it gets even worse with Universes Beyond too, because you can't take someone's classic IP like Lord of the Rings or whatever and just make crappy versions of their cards. No one's
Gandalf is
playable. That's all he does.
Yeah. Like you just can't do that. People would not be happy with that. So that is a big concern, I think, for Universes Beyond in specific. And we've already seen Wizards like on top of that, Wizards doesn't necessarily have the ability to control power levels as much as they want to. We saw like Nexus of Fate or even Kenrith were cards that came out after Wizards directly said like the idea buy a box promos is they're not going to be playable, and then like 2 sets later we're getting like the best card in Standard as a buy a box promo. Whether Wizards did that like intentionally or they just, I think maybe they didn't realize that Nexus was going to be as good as it actually was. But even if they do intend to not make the cards too broken, that doesn't mean you're not going to get a Skull Clamp or a Nexus or Fate or something that ends up being really playable, even if that is Wizards' goal. So definitely a risky system, I think, of printing cards. And for me, again, this is 100% not about Universes Beyond. It's just about how they're printing cards. Like, my feelings would be exactly the same if they were like, hey, we're going to print new, you know, our Return to Kamigawa Secret Lair drop with exclusive cards that are going to be legal in Legacy and Commander, and we're going to only release it through a Secret Lair drop. I would have, you know, many of the same exact concerns of just like not being enough supply out there and just like the risks of card prices getting really out of whack. Anyway, any other thoughts on Universes Beyond Secret Lairs, or should we hit up a couple fish mail on the way out the door today?
Let's fish mail it up.
If you have questions, send them to @MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air. At the Big Large, with the recent opening of the Marvel campus at Disney California Adventure, what kind of rides / attractions / food would you like to see at an MTG themed area of a theme park?
Oko's the food court. That's all I know. Oko's the food court. That's simple as that.
What would be a good ride for a MTG themed food theme park?
Oh my gosh, you want to know a true scary ride that they can put at an MTG theme park? They call it 2019 Forward Magic. And it's gonna be the scariest ride of all time because it's gonna have so many ups and downs and swirls and twirls and random surprises. It would be great.
They could have like a little kid's merry-go-round that has actual like vehicles, like you can ride on a smuggler's
bumper
copter,
cars?
or a Heart of Kirin. Yeah, bumper cars with vehicles.
Yeah. Yeah. See, so we'll have the 2019 Magic ride. We'll have the vehicles bumper cars ride, and then we have the food court called like Oko's or something like that, right? And it'll be written in like the old school like diner font. You know what I mean? So like,
yeah, ginger brutes. You can get your ginger brute cookies.
Yeah,
ginger brute would be good. I want to see the Jurassic World type ride. It's like the Jund ride. You just go a little raft. You float down your little river, and there's like a Tarmogoyf, like an animatronic Tarmogoyf there, getting destroyed by Death Shadow or something, right? and then the thing just abruptly ends as like Ulamog smashes your car, and then that's it.
Ulamog
that'd be a fun thing. That'd be
the
fun.
Eldrazi would just be like definitely the like, you know, the T-Rex ride and all that stuff.
Yeah. Asking Flower28, do you think they should do something about life gain decks in Historic, especially best of one? I play against it at least every other match, and it's at least a very frustrating gameplay, and it's very hard to beat with creature-based decks.
Ooh, that does not sound super fun. I don't play that much best of one. My initial reaction is going to be, oh, just play some sideboard hate cards, but maybe that doesn't actually work in best of one. Krim, you play it more than I do. How would you fight the life gain decks in Historic and best of one?
Believe it or not, I also play creature decks in best of one, and the way I think the main thing here is you just got to be prepared for the Soul Warden. Soul Warden and the Valkyrie are the biggest ones, and outside of that, have a good old like Ferocidon, or now with Atarka's Command, can potentially set you up for a winning turn. So only apply enough. Like, I guess you need red, because Roiling Vortex, all of that stuff, it's all in red. So if you can get access to red, then that's how you would do it creature base wise. Other than that, I mean, I don't know what other creature decks there are that aren't like playing those cards themselves. So like Selesnya, like, you know, mid range, or Coco, all of that. And then if you're playing like Merfolk, you'll probably have like counter spells and stuff like that too.
All right, last question. 11 Vicious, with all the different Modern Horizons 2 products coming out, what do you think this will do to the price of singles? Will the card prices drop like standard, or will the price tag per box too high, or is the price tag per box too high to make a difference?
I still think the price tag per box, like maybe right now when the hype is at its highest and everyone's like buying in and whatnot, and like, yeah, sure, cards are absurdly priced, but I feel like at some point those boxes are just going to be too much.
I think as far as singles, I know, Richard, you've been like working on some set EV stuff over the weekend for the site, and the EV right now is absurdly high, which means prices got to come down a lot. So my guess is that the prices of singles is going to drop a huge amount over the next few weeks. Like, I think a lot of cards are going to be worth half of what they are now. So sure, some of the chase cards are still going to maintain value, but current prices are way higher than the EV would suggest they can maintain. So my advice would be, if you're thinking about getting singles, wait a couple weeks. The set doesn't actually release officially until the 18th, so we're still technically in this weird long pre-sale period. So I'd be looking at least after the 18th, maybe the end of the month, the beginning of July is when I would hopefully be expecting to see prices drop a bit, and that would probably be the time when I would be looking to start picking up the singles that I need. So just be a little bit patient. Prices have got to come down a lot from where they're at currently.
Yeah, I think with all these weird products and printings, like, people just don't know how to price cards anymore. The current EV of a pack is $25. Putting your box at $900 EV, right? That's obviously far too high, and I don't think that's correct. Like, I don't, a box right now is about $200, $210 or something on Amazon. I don't think it's going to reach up to $700 or something to reach equilibrium. That means single prices will crash all the way down such that the box EV is closer to 210. So that means singles have a lot of room to go down. Like, not every card can be super expensive, right? You can't have all the fetches and Ragavan and all the evoke spells and Urza Sai. You can't have all these things be expensive, even though they're really good, right? Some of them have to come down in price. So I think we got to wait a bit more. I think one thing I need to do is check the EV of like previous sets and how long it takes for the price to decay back down to like some acceptable range. And that would be the time to buy singles. For the new cards. For things like fetches and things, it's probably going to remain pretty stable.
Yeah, fetches are still going to be fine. I mean, Strixhaven had a pretty positive EV, not as much surplus value as Modern Horizons 2, but it was still, I think collector's boosters in specific were like $600, $650 around this time, like right before the set released. Now collector booster EV is down to like $308 when you can buy them for around $250, which is about right. So that's the normal progression. And by those numbers, that would mean prices got to drop a ton for Modern Horizons 2.
All right. That's all the fish mail we have for this week. So thank you to everyone who sent in questions. If you have questions, send them to @MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air.
And I believe that brings us to the end of episode 332 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. So Richard, Krim, thanks for hanging out. Thanks to everyone for listening. And we will be back next week to talk about whatever goes down in the world of Magic. So until then, everyone, have an amazing week. And this is the crew signing out.